Welcome to FCC Rules and Regulations Part 2 with Mr. Thomas. Thank you for making it through Part 1. I know this isn't the most fun way to do a lecture, but given the circumstances, it is the best way I could think of because the alternative is you reading this manual on your own. And you can, and that's an option. But I think it's a little easier to listen along, hopefully, and just kind of get the highlights pointed out to you. But if that's not the case and this isn't working for you, feel free to read it on your own. No hard feelings. All right, we left off. We talked about the EAS system. The second half of this manual is actually a lot more fun because we're going to talk about obscene speech and indecent speech and a whole bunch of different things. Criticism, ridicule, humor. Give you some bad examples of not to do, both from WLTL and from professionals, quote-unquote professionals. All right, let's talk about some more broadcast law and policy here, according to the manual. Antenna markings. You ever go by in a tower, an antenna, and it's painted alternating stripes of orange and white or red and white? That is so planes don't run into it. If an antenna is more than 200 feet tall, it must be alternating red and white paint. WLTL is exempt from this rule because our antenna is... Do you remember from the WLTL Rules and Regulations Manual? Let me pause for dramatic effect and to see if you do. That's right, 115 feet tall. WLTL's antenna is only 115 feet tall, which means we do not have to have lights on it, nor do we have to have it painted. Because if a plane is about to run into WLTL's antenna at 115 feet tall, that plane has way bigger issues than running into WLTL's antenna. Power limits. We are how many watts? Who remembers? Again, pause for dramatic effect to see if you remember from the from the WLTL Rules and Regulations test. That's right, 180 watts of power. So, because we are 180 watts of power, we must broadcast between 162 watts and 189 watts. Because, as you can see in bold and italics, stations must stay between 90 and 105% of their licensed power. WLTL's transmitter is set to about 101, 102% of our licensed power because they say we can go over. So we do. But we don't go too far over because, of course, we don't want to get above that 105 and start interfering with anybody. More broadcast law and policy about programming. This has come up a lot more lately in the last couple of years about broadcast journalism, news coverage. The FCC does not tell stations what to air or review anybody's qualifications for broadcasting news reports. If you don't believe this, all you have to do is watch the news on any cable channel, anywhere, anytime. I am not here to tell you one channel is more biased than another, or one channel does better coverage than another, but there are certainly people on all of the channels, regardless of what channel you watch, who maybe are better reporters than other reporters. It's up to the station to decide who broadcasts the news and what stories they cover. Also, what angle of the story do they cover? So if you want to be biased without being biased, you just don't maybe cover a story. They don't regard that as something they need to stick their head into, the FCC. They just tell you, the viewer or listener, to evaluate it yourself and worry about it on your own, which actually is good because, of course, who needs the FCC interfering with the daily work of anybody's radio or TV station? Now, there are two types of programming that they do specifically say are okay, and those are certain political broadcasts. So we were talking before about political editorials and how those are wrong. They are wrong, but there are two political broadcasts that are actually allowed. The two are on-the-spot news coverage and interviews on a bona fide news show. So, on-the-spot news coverage. Let's say one of our students is downtown in LaGrange, and they're covering a grand opening of a new store. And all of a sudden, without any planning or advanced knowledge, walks by our local congressman. Because they are on the spot at this grand opening, and the congressman made an appearance, we can interview them on the air without any fear of having that be an editorial or having the other political party, Democrat or Republican, whoever the congressman was for, having their rivals say, we want airtime too. The other thing is an interview on a bona fide news show. Not a politics show, but a news show. So let's say I have on the mayor of LaGrange to talk about recent business developments in the town on a news show. That's okay. He's the mayor, or she's the mayor. I think it's a he. They're the mayor. Let's go with there. They're the mayor. It's their town. They're going to come on a news show and talk about it. That's okay. That is not a political editorial. That's the only time the FCC tells people in programming-wise that it is allowed and that it is okay. Now let's talk about some fun stuff. Criticism, ridicule, and humor. We're going to get back into the First Amendment here. We mentioned it in the first half of this cast, but let's get into it a little more. The First Amendment guarantees the freedom of speech. It also guarantees 4 other freedoms. If you haven't read the First Amendment, do yourself a favor. Read the First Amendment. It's only 45 words long. But in those 45 words, they guarantee you 5 essential freedoms, I think, to being a United States citizen. One of the most important for radio, of course, is the freedom of speech. And to have true freedom of speech, you have to protect programming that stereotypes or otherwise offends people with regards to religion, race, national background, gender, or other characteristics. Now, does that mean you can get on WLTL and tell a great joke about the Catholic Church or make fun of blondes or other religions or race or ethnic stereotypes? No, absolutely not, because there is a difference between freedom of speech, giving you the right to do it, and, of course, the sense that should you do it. We are a high school public radio station. We definitely 100% censor some topics about what you can and can't say. Also, you should be self-censoring as well, because, of course, your listening audience is a wide-ranging and variety of people. You do not want to alienate them. Let me give you a true-to-life 2 examples. The first coming from a professional DJ. His name was Don Imus. He just passed away not too long ago. And on the radio, on a morning show in New York City, he called the Rutgers girls basketball team, quote, a bunch of nappy-headed hoes, end quote. Don Imus said this on the air. When he says that on the air, is he protected in his First Amendment rights? The answer is yes. It was an attempt at ridicule and humor. It failed miserably, but it is protected. Now, did he lose his job? The answer is yes. He did lose his job. Advertisers pulled out of his show. He apologized. He had the team on. He had the coach on. He did a very nice job making up for it, but he still got fired. So just because you can say something doesn't mean you should. Let me give you another example, this one from WLTL. It was before my time. I've been here 16 years. I want to say it was 17 or 18 years ago now. One of our sports announcers on the radio during a football game said something along the lines that the football coach and coaching staff should all be fired and the school should start over new next year. At the time, the football team was terrible. The football team was losing the game badly. They had yet to maybe win a game that season. The coach came to the general manager of the radio station, again, not me, but the woman who was before me, and asked if she was okay with that. And she said, I think it was a little harsh, but that's his opinion. That is his criticism of the team, and he has the right to say it. And she defended him, as well she should have, by the way, as well as I would have as well. Now, here's the thing, though. Did that student ever get an interview with another football player? No. The coach told him, if anyone talks to WLTL, you will run and run and run and not play in the next games. So all the players basically told the student, hey, I'm sorry, we can't go on your show anymore and we can't interview with you anymore because our coach told us basically you're blacklisted. So did this student have the right to have that criticism? Absolutely. Did his freedom of speech have a price? Absolutely. Now, this is not me telling you to not have freedom of speech. This is me just telling you to weigh your options. And a lot of times on radio at WLTL, your options are very easily weighed because it just doesn't make sense to anger somebody to have a hot take that's just going to get people talking about you, but then you aren't going to be able to talk anymore at all. Because, again, we, WLTL, can censor you, but the FCC won't. One little tip that's taped up on the screen for you. It does really look like tape, doesn't it? Freedom of speech does not cover what's called clear and present danger, i.e. yelling fire when there's no fire, or telling people a attack is happening in downtown LaGrange and they should seek safety if there is no attack happening. That is not covered by freedom of speech, and you can be and probably will be arrested for it and end up going to jail. So that's not cool. All right, obscenity and indecency. What is obscene and indecent speech? Oh, this is the fun stuff. When you look at your manual, we'll get a little more into it, but let's talk about obscene speech first. Basically, obscene speech is not protected by the First Amendment, and it has to fit those three characteristics that you're looking at in your manual. But if any one of those three is true, then it's not obscene speech. So let me give you a real life example again. This is coming from a shock jock in Chicago who used to go by the name of Man Cow. I think he still does go by Man Cow. He's on mornings right now on WLS 890 AM, but he used to be on the alternative station in Chicago. He had on a comedian who was making jokes of sexual nature. The same week, Oprah Winfrey had on a doctor who was talking about the things this comedian was joking about, the sexual behaviors this comedian was joking about. Oprah's show did not get fined, but Mancow's did. And Mancow flipped his lid and said, that doctor said the exact same words as my comedian. And he was 100% right. The comedian used the exact same words and terminology that the doctor did. But one of the three characteristics it must fit is, does the speech merit true artistic, literary, or scientific value? The stand-up dirty joke comedian did not fit that characteristic, but the medical doctor on Oprah's show did. Therefore, Oprah's show was not obscene, but the morning show was. If you have more questions about what obscene speech is, you're welcome to reach out to me. That's probably the best example I'm willing to give on a public podcast. But the obscene speech, just know it's not protected. And even if it was, it wouldn't be protected at WLTL. Indecent speech is protected by the First Amendment, but is limited to safe harbor hours. Well, first, what is indecent speech? These are the dirty words you hear when you watch a movie, when you watch HBO, when you talk to your friends, or you maybe overhear your parents say when they're on the phone with somebody who's not making them very happy. All that speech is protected by the First Amendment. However, it is limited on radio and not allowed between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. Now, the reason why those hours are not considered what's called safe harbor is because that is when there are more likely to be children in the audience. So from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., can you swear on the radio? The answer is actually yes. However, most stations, including WLTL, still prohibit it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So please do not go swear on WLTL after 10 p.m., but no, I guess technically you could, but don't do it. Don't ever do it. Promotions, contests. There's three big rules that you have to note, and they're here in these three blocks for you. Contests must be fully and accurately disclosed. Contests must not be misleading, false, or deceptive. And contests cannot be raffle style or lottery style where people pay to win, because that would be considered a lottery, and that is illegal. So, for example, what do we mean by fully and accurately disclosed? So WLTL's contest rules very explicitly state, to win a prize from WLTL, you must be a resident of Illinois, Indiana, or Wisconsin. That is published on the contest rules section of our website, and we air it on the radio when we give contests away. If somebody called from Iowa and said, can I win? We would say no, and they would say why? And we would say, because in our rules it is fully and accurately disclosed you must be a resident of Illinois, Indiana, or Wisconsin. You can make any rules you like about your contests, but they have to be fully and accurately disclosed. Well, I shouldn't say any rules you like, but you can make a lot of rules you like about your contests, but they must be fully and accurately disclosed. Second, they must not be misleading, false, or deceptive. True, real-life example, luckily not from WLTL. A DJ got on the radio in the 80s and gave away a Corvette. The listener called up, thought he was winning a Corvette. the DJ gave them a toy car Corvette. Ha ha ha, real funny. Who doesn't think it's very funny? The listener who thinks he's winning a Corvette. As it turns out, that was considered a deceptive, misleading, and false contest. So the radio station had to buy that listener a true, actually working life-size Corvette. Another DJ got on the radio one time and gave away $100,000. What did that DJ give away? If you've got a sweet tooth and you're a candy fan like myself, he gave away $100,000 candy bar. However, that contest was was found out to be misleading, false, and deceptive after that listener complained, and that listener ended up with $100,000 plus the candy bar. The DJs in both cases ended up losing their jobs, as you might imagine. The third case, lotteries or raffles. We can do raffle contests where people get a ticket to win. We just can't have them pay for it. That's considered gambling. No one can run a lottery unless you happen to have a license for it, and very few people have licenses for it. So that is gambling. We can do a lottery contest raffle style. We just can't do it and ask people for money. That's the big things you need to know about contests. But remember, from the WLTL rules and regulations test, there's even more rules than this with contests. So please don't run your own without prior permission from WLTL. We're almost at the end. I promise we got like 3 more slides. Broadcasting phone calls. If you're going to put a phone call on the air, which you're not allowed to do if you remember from WLTL's rules, but in case you are, you have to tell the person they're going on air and or that call is being recorded. If a station regularly puts callers on the air, they do not need to tell callers they're going on the air, i.e. talk radio stations do not need to tell them, because if you call a talk radio station, the assumption is you want to go on the air. But if you call WLTL, they work under the assumption that you are just calling to talk off the air. This is going to be on the test. It's really not going to be a consideration for you, but at the same time, you do need to know it for the test, just like you do the rest of this information we've been talking about. Okay, now on to underwriting. This is the form of advertising that we can do on WLTL. If you remember watching PBS as a kid, or maybe not as a kid, I used to watch Arthur when I was in college. They will do a promotional sponsorship at the beginning of the show and then at the end of the show, but it won't interrupt the show. That's in the form of underwriting that they do on television on PBS stations. On non-commercial radio stations, we can acknowledge the support from for-profit groups over the air, but we can't say certain things. So what can we do? We can say slogans that do not promote, location information, value-neutral descriptions, and brand names or trade names. So, for example, if McDonald's were to give us money, we could say, McDonald's, I'm loving it, located at the corner of LaGrange and Ogden Avenue, offering Big Macs, Chicken McNuggets, salads, and more. McDonald's, I'm loving it. Thanks for your support to WLTL. We could say something like that because that is all underwriting. What cannot be included, and we'll put this here, is anything false or misleading. It can't be offensive. Obviously, it can't be for tobacco or alcohol. And it also can't include comparisons, and it can't include price. So I can't say McDonald's at the corner of this and that offering Big Macs now 2 for $3. If I say now for 2 for $3, that becomes an ad. That is no longer an underwriting. Or, hey, when you go to XYZ restaurant, you get a free drink with your student ID. That becomes an ad. That is no longer underwriting. I can't say prices, and I can't give you an incentive to go there. The way underwriting works essentially is if you support WLTL and XYZ Restaurant supports WLTL, therefore you should want to support XYZ Restaurant because you both support WLTL. Underwriting makes you make the connection, where advertising makes you want to go there by giving you an offer. That's the difference between advertising and underwriting. Now, underwriting on WLTL only really happens during our Rockathon every President's Day weekend and occasionally throughout the year. For example, Dr. Patrick Pendleton sponsors LT football on WLTL. We'll give him a shout out here. He has for the past 2 seasons. That's something that we do, but that's very few and far between unless it's our fundraising weekend. What do you want to do if you complain or want to complain about a radio station to the FCC? The first thing you got to do is you got to contact the radio station first. The FCC makes you contact the station first. Why? 2 reasons. It gives us, the station, a chance to respond. And 2, it can save them an unnecessary investigation. If you complain to me and I answer your questions and make you a happy customer first, then they don't have to worry about it. And personally, as a general manager and faculty advisor at WLTL, we very much want to take care of the problem first before it gets up to the FCC, right? It's kind of like when you get in trouble with your siblings. You try to, calm that storm over first before mom and dad find out. Same thing with the FCC and WLTL. All right, last slide, the public file. The public file is the bane of my existence. The public file takes up so much of my time as a general manager of the radio station, but it's required by law, so we do it. What is the public file? Well, stations are required to maintain one, and the purpose is that in one spot, all of the documents that the public would ever need to see about WLTL, things like our donor lists, our contracts, our licenses, our any fines we've received, which are 0, again, knock on wood. All that information is in one spot that the public can see it. And the public file used to be housed at WLTL in a literal file cabinet, but as of about 2 years ago now, it's completely online. So the public file can be viewed 24/7 online at the link at the bottom of WLTL.net. So where is the public file? You'll need to know this for the test. It is online at fcc.gov, or the link is on our homepage at WLTL.net. If you have an insomnia problem, do yourself a favor and pull up the public file. That will be a great way to go ahead and kind of knock out those insomnia worries you may have, because it's not very exciting information in the public file. However, it is all there, and it is a legal requirement we are made to do. So that, my friends, ends the FCC rules and regulations lecture. I went through stuff pretty fast. I went through a lot of stuff fast here in these 2 parts. I highly recommend that you go through the manual yourself. You will need to go through the manual yourself with the study guide and fill in the answers and submit that before you are allowed to take the FCC test. Do that. Go through that study guide, submit it to me. We'll give you the code for the FCC test, and then you'll be on your merry way to take the FCC rules and regulations quiz. And then you'll be on to module number 4, where we'll actually get to start making radio, which is much more fun than just learning about the rules and regulations of radio. If you have any questions, please reach out. Otherwise, best of luck to you, and we will talk to you soon.